We hope that all of you had, with friends and family, some form of Thanksgiving celebration. We did, and I was grateful for it. I also have thought about the first Thanksgiving at Plymouth, Massachusetts, what became Plymouth, Massachusetts, in 1620. The Mayflower took almost 60 days to cross. It's only about 90 feet long. It had 102 passengers and a crew of 30 when they found themselves at what became Plymouth Rock in the Massachusetts Bay. A couple of people had died on the way. It was a very rough journey, and for the next, they arrived in December of 1620. It's a cold time in New England in December, and they had nothing going for them. They actually had to live in the ship while they worked to build a few log cabins. And when spring came, the indigenous people, Manhasset Tribal Federation people, helped them, showed them how to plant and grow things that might work in that environment. And to celebrate the first harvest in October of 1621, in the first harvest, they had a celebration, which they did with their indigenous friends who'd showed them how to do a lot of what they accomplished. Incidentally, all of the food they had was organic. And we don't know too much about what they had, but at that first Thanksgiving, there were only 53 left. In other words, almost half of the people had died in that first year, trying to survive the winter and the weather and living on an old ship while log cabins were built. Half had died, and yet they celebrated the good things that had come to their lives with the help of their local indigenous friends. It's an amazing story to me, but it has some sad dimensions. It was only a year or two later that some people in that group began to take land and food from the indigenous people, and soon some were being killed, and it started the long history of Native American people being exploited continually, expropriated from their land and their villages and their food by the descendants of our 53 Pilgrim Fathers. And it was only 64 years when the officials of the Massachusetts colony began to execute old women as witches. There was a perceived threat to the social control of the community. In Massachusetts, in Pennsylvania, there were no witches and no one was executed. But in the Bay Colony, they had become almost control freaks, trying to make sure that Baptists and Quakers and other people didn't break up the harmony of the community. And it illustrates to me a problem that's as old as our human history, that good things happen in the midst of the greed and selfishness that can occur in human communities. In the early days of the Jewish faith, people believed that God had chosen their tribe not because they were good, but simply because he loved them, and that was the only reason. And that notion came into Christianity as agape, the notion that God loved people without any regard to their qualifications. You were loved despite yourself. And it was an idea that apparently animated a lot of the early a Christian and also Jewish communities. But throughout the history, though, the Christian churches also had long periods of prosecuting and killing other people, doing horrible things on the Crusades, and persecuting any kind of dissenters through the Middle Ages. There were saints along the way, but there were an awful lot of unhappy things that we wouldn't be thankful for. But in the modern day, what we're dealing with today, in this congregation and in our community, what can we do that makes a difference, that gives hope for a better world and a better community? I'll mention only a couple things that I've experienced. I think it's in considering all the bad things in life. I think it's helpful to have a sense of humor. Reverend Brian has one, which I think is great, and I have one too. May not be obvious, but I inherited it from my father and grandfather, and I've always thought it's good to be able to laugh at everything, to see the positive side. Joanne and I were fans of Jimmy Buffett, who died a few months ago, and we were parrot heads. We have the hats that prove it. But Jimmy said once that you have to grow old, but you don't have to grow up. You can keep the vitality and youthfulness and spontaneity and excitement of being young as children are young. Not to be childish, but to try to keep the curiosity and animation that continues to make life interesting. And in my experience, it leads to being optimistic, that we almost always have to think that no matter what's happened to us, the good things and the bad things, that life will get better. We can together make our community and our world a better place to live. The Christians, through most of the theology, thought that God had only chosen certain people, that no one could know, and you could do nothing to assure the better life for yourself. But the universalists of our tradition had the notion that the good things of life that come from God are for all people, anywhere, all people, not certain ones from certain tribes or certain theological traditions. We're in a community that can foster hope, that through things that are being done in this group, through the Faith in Action, the Social Action Committee, all the efforts to promote civil justice reform in the community, all the efforts to encourage people to vote. These are things that we are doing that can help make our community better. And in doing that, we help each other become better. A few months ago, at the end of one of our services, one of you said to me, and I guess we passed it on, that I love you, and you can't do anything about it. And that stuck with me as a powerful thought, I leave that with you to pass on to other people.